Room 2114. When the security guard told me to lock my door and not open it for anyone, not staff, not housekeeping, not anyone claiming to be hotel personnel, he didn't explain why. He just said, "It's safer." In 23 years of walking into damaged buildings, flooded basements, and collapsed roofs, no one had ever told me that staying perfectly still inside a locked room was the safest option available to me. That alone told me everything I needed to know. Something on the other side of that door was worse than anything I was supposed to ask about. My name is Gerald. I'm 53, and I've spent the better part of my adult life walking into strangers' problems with a clipboard, a camera, and a face that gives away absolutely nothing. I'm an insurance adjuster. Hail damage, wind damage, water intrusion, fire aftermath, commercial properties mostly. I drive to places no one wants to visit, document what went wrong, and leave before anyone can make it personal. The job rewards a specific temperament, methodical, unemotional, observational. You learn to see what's actually there, not what you're afraid might be there. Feelings don't belong in a field report, neither does speculation. I note facts. I follow protocols. I move on. So when my company sent me to a small city in southern Colorado in the winter of 2014, routine commercial claim, hail damage to a strip mall's exterior cladding, I approached it the way I approach everything. Drive in, check into a hotel, review the file, sleep, inspect in the morning, drive home by lunch. Ordinary, forgettable, exactly how I like it. I arrived at the hotel around 7 in the evening. It was one of those mid-tier roadside chains clustered near the highway interchange. 3 stories, exterior quarters on the ground floor, interior hallways on the upper floors. A parking lot that was mostly empty. The kind of place that exists purely to be functional. You don't remember the name. You barely remember the room. It serves its purpose and then it dissolves from your memory like a receipt you never needed. The lobby smelled stale. Old coffee and industrial carpet cleaner layered over something faintly sour that I couldn't identify. The woman at the front desk was pleasant enough in the way that people who repeated the same script 400 times tend to be. She slid my keycard across the counter without making eye contact and mentioned that complimentary breakfast began at 6:15. I thanked her and headed upstairs. Second floor. Long corridor with identical doors on both sides. The carpet pattern in that aggressive geometric design hotels used to hide stains. My room was at the far end, near the corner where the hallway turned toward the fire exit. I noticed the details I always notice, not because I was worried, but because my brain is wired to catalog them. Security camera dome near the stairwell, small red light blinking steadily. Fire exit map mounted on the back of my door, "You are here." Circled in faded marker. The deadbolt on the door looked like it had been recently replaced. Newer hardware than the handle, screws still bright. The chain lock was the standard flimsy type that provides more psychological comfort than actual security. I dropped my bag, ordered delivery from a Thai place down the road, and ate sitting on the edge of the bed while scrolling through photos of dented aluminum siding on my laptop. Standard prep work. I laid out my clothes for the morning: khakis, a collared shirt, my company jacket with the logo on the chest, plugged in my phone, set my alarm for 5:45, turned off the overhead light and left the bathroom light on with the door cracked, a habit I picked up from years of unfamiliar hotel rooms. I was asleep by 10:30. At 11:20, I woke up. Not gradually, not from a dream. I opened my eyes and was immediately alert, the way you are when some part of your subconscious has registered a sound before your conscious mind can identify it. Footsteps. In the hallway, approaching from the direction of the elevator. Hotel hallways amplify everything. The ice machine, 3 doors down, sounds like it's in your closet. A luggage wheel on thin carpet might as well be a drumroll. Footsteps are the most common sound you hear, and 99 times out of 100 they mean absolutely nothing. Someone returning to their room late, someone heading to the vending machines, someone stepping out for a cigarette. These footsteps were steady, unhurried, a measured, even pace that carried no urgency and no hesitation. They came down the hallway and stopped, right outside my door, not near my door, not a few rooms over, directly outside room 24. I could tell by the acoustics, the way the sound shifted when someone stands in the small alcove created by a recessed hotel doorframe. The air changes. The echo tightens. I lay still and listened. No key card beep. No knock. No muttered, wrong room. Just silence where movement had been. 30 seconds passed, maybe 40. Then the footsteps resumed, continuing down the hallway toward the corner. I heard the fire exit door open and close with a soft, pneumatic hiss. I exhaled. Wrong room, I told myself. Checked a number, realized their mistake, moved on. The most boring explanation available. I've always preferred boring explanations. They're usually correct. 10 minutes later, the footsteps came back. Same pace, same rhythm, same direction, from the elevator end of the hall, approaching my door, and again, they stopped in exactly the same spot. This time I got up. Slowly, quietly. I crossed the room in bare feet and pressed my eye to the peephole. The hallway was empty. The fishy lens distorted the carpet pattern into a warped funnel of beige and burgundy. The walls curved away on both sides. The light fixtures cast that flat, institutional glow that makes everything look the same temperature. I could see 3 doors on the opposite side of the hall, all closed. The corridor was completely still, but I'd heard the footsteps stop. Right here, seconds ago. I cracked the door just an inch, just enough to angle my head and look down. The carpet outside my door showed the faint impression of weight. Not footprints exactly, but the nap of the carpet was disturbed in a way that suggested someone had been standing there very recently, shifting their weight, rocking slightly, the way you do when you're waiting. I closed the door and locked it, went back to bed, didn't sleep, stared at the ceiling and listened to the heater cycling on and off. Just after midnight, 12:03 by the clock on the nightstand, the footsteps returned. This time they were slower, more deliberate. Each step landed with a precision that felt intentional, like someone measuring the distance. They stopped outside my door, and almost immediately I heard a new sound, a soft metallic rattle, brief, exploratory. The sound of someone gently testing a door handle, not turning it fully, just applying pressure to see if it would give. A pause, then another rattle, slightly longer, then nothing. I sat up and reached for my phone. I called the front desk. When the woman answered, I kept my voice flat, controlled. The same tone I use when I'm explaining to a property owner that their claim has been partially denied. This is room 214. Over the past 45 minutes, someone has stopped outside my door 3 times. The most recent time, approximately 30 seconds ago, it sounded like they were attempting to test my door handle. A pause. Not the confused pause of someone who doesn't understand. A different kind. The pause of someone whose expression just changed. "Okay," she said carefully. Her voice had dropped half a register. "I'm going to transfer you to our overnight security. Please stay on the line." The hold music lasted maybe 20 seconds. Then a man's voice came through. Older, deeper, with the clipped cadence of someone who'd spent years in either the military or law enforcement before settling into private security work. "Sir, what room are you in?" 214. A pause. I heard the faint sound of a keyboard or possibly a radio being keyed. "All right. I need you to remain in your room for the rest of the night." "Why?" "It's just the safest course of action right now." "Safest?" I repeated the word back to him. Not as a question, as a measurement. People in my line of work understand that word choice matters. He didn't say best. He didn't say easiest. He said safest, which implied that other courses of action carried specific, identifiable risk. "Should I leave the hotel?" I asked. "I can pack in 2 minutes and drive to another property." "No." The word came immediately. No hesitation, no consideration. An answer he already had prepared. "Do not leave your room." "Are the police being contacted?" A longer pause. I could hear him breathing, making a decision about how much to tell me. "Not at this time." Then he gave me instructions. "Lock the door. Engage the deadbolt. Use the chain. Do not open the door for anyone until morning. Not for housekeeping. Not for maintenance. Not for anyone who identifies themselves as hotel staff. If someone knocks and claims to be personnel, do not open the door. Call the front desk first and verify." "Do you understand?" he asked. "Yes." "Good. Try to get some rest." He hung up. I stood in the middle of the room holding my phone and processed what had just happened. In 23 years of professional work, I have been in buildings with active mold contamination, structures one strong gust from collapse, and rooms where the floor was so water damaged that my foot went through to the crawl space below. In every one of those situations, the protocol was the same. Identify the hazard, communicate the hazard, remove yourself from the hazard. Transparency, information, action. What had just happened was the opposite. The security guard had given me instructions with no context. He'd restricted my movement without explaining the threat. He'd specifically told me not to trust anyone who came to my door, including his own staff. That's not precaution, that's containment. You contain a situation when the threat is still active and unresolved, and when giving the person full information might cause them to do something that makes it worse. I locked the deadbolt. I put the chain on. I dragged the desk chair to the center of the room and sat in it, facing the door, fully dressed. I put my car keys in my right hand, not as a weapon, just because keys represent the ability to leave. Options. Agency. Something solid to hold while everything else felt uncertain. The room was quiet. The heater clicked on, hummed for a while, clicked off. Pipes settled somewhere in the walls. A car passed on the highway outside, its headlights sweeping briefly across the curtains. 15 minutes passed. Then the footsteps came again, slower this time. So slow that each step was its own isolated event, separated from the next by 2 or 3 seconds of silence. Like someone who was no longer in any hurry, like someone who had all the time in the world. They stopped outside my door. I didn't move. I didn't go to the peephole. I just sat in the chair and stared at the door and listened. Breathing. Not heavy, not labored, just present, close. The sound of someone standing with their face inches from the door, breathing at a normal resting rate. In, out, patient, calm. The breathing of someone who was exactly where they wanted to be. No knock came, no handle rattle, no attempt to enter. Just that quiet, steady breathing, separated from me by 2 inches of wood and a deadbolt that suddenly felt very, very thin. I don't know how long it lasted. My sense of time compressed into something unreliable. It could have been 2 minutes. It could have been 8. At some point, I became aware of another sound, distant from the far end of the hallway. A radio. A brief burst of static followed by a low, unintelligible voice. The kind of sound a security walkie-talkie makes. The breathing stopped. Not abruptly. It didn't cut off. It just receded. Like someone slowly pulling their face back from the door. Then footsteps, retreating down the hallway. Not running, not hurried. Measured and purposeful. The walk of someone who had made a decision. The fire exit door opened and closed. After that, nothing. The silence that followed was somehow worse than any of the sounds that preceded it. Silence after a resolved threat feels like relief. Silence after an unresolved one feels like a held breath. The building settled around me. Creaks, drips, the mechanical heartbeat of the HVAC system, and I sat in that chair and monitored every single sound, sorting each one into categories: normal, possibly normal, unexplained. I did not sleep. Around 5:30, the hotel began to wake. A toilet flushed somewhere on my floor. A door opened and closed. Muffled voices in the hallway. A couple, by the sound of it, discussing breakfast. A television turned on in the room next to mine, volume too loud, morning news. At 6:15, a knock came. 2 firm, measured taps. Security, you're clear. I did not open the door. I picked up the phone and called the front desk. A different clerk answered. Male, morning shift. I asked him to confirm that security was currently standing outside room 214. I heard typing, a brief hold, then, yes, sir, that's confirmed. I opened the door. The guard was a thick-set man in his late 50s, standing with his hands clasped in front of him, posture open and non-threatening. His expression was professionally blank, the face of someone who has been trained to communicate nothing. He didn't apologize. He didn't offer reassurance. He didn't volunteer a single piece of information. What happened last night? I asked. He met my eyes briefly, then looked away, not evasively, but the way someone does when they're choosing their words from a very limited, approved list. There was an individual on this floor who wasn't a registered guest, and That's really all I can share with you, sir. Was anyone hurt? A pause. Almost imperceptible, but I caught it. The kind of pause that means the answer is more complicated than the question. No, sir. I waited for more. Nothing came. He wished me a safe drive and walked back down the hallway toward the elevator. I noticed he checked each door he passed, not the handles, just a visual scan of the frame and the lock plate. Quick, practiced, systematic. Like he was checking for signs of tampering. At checkout, the morning clerk processed my receipt without comment. He asked how my stay was with the same automated cheerfulness he probably offered every departing guest. I said it was fine. He didn't flinch, didn't glance at a note, didn't acknowledge that anything unusual had occurred on the second floor of his hotel 6 hours earlier. I loaded my car, drove to the inspection site, photographed 40 minutes of hail-damaged siding, filed my report in the parking lot, and was on the highway heading home by noon. For weeks afterward, the experience sat in the back of my mind, like a stone in a shoe. Not painful enough to stop walking, but impossible to ignore. I replayed the details methodically, the way I'd review a claim file. The footsteps, the timing, the handle test, the breathing, the security guard's response. And the more I examined it, the more one detail rose above the others. It wasn't the footsteps that disturbed me. Footsteps are mechanical. They're sound without intent. It wasn't the breathing, though that was deeply unsettling in the moment. It wasn't even the fact that someone had been testing my door handle at midnight in a highway hotel. It was the security guard's instructions. Do not open the door for anyone, not staff, not housekeeping. If someone claims to be hotel personnel, call us first. He didn't tell me to be cautious. He told me to trust no one who came to my door, including people who worked there, which meant one of two things. Either he wasn't sure the person in the hallway wasn't affiliated with the hotel, or he wasn't sure the person wouldn't claim to be. Both possibilities lead to the same dark corridor, and I've spent a long time trying not to walk down it. But there's one more thing. A small detail I didn't register until much later. Weeks later, when I was lying in my own bed at home, staring at my own ceiling, replaying the sequence for the 100th time. When I'd cracked my door and looked out after the second visit, the hallway was empty. Completely empty. No one in either direction, but the footsteps had stopped outside my door only seconds before I looked. The hallway was a straight shot in both directions. 50 feet to the elevator on one end, 30 feet to the fire exit on the other. Even running, a person couldn't have cleared either end in the 2 or 3 seconds it took me to cross the room and open the door, which means they didn't go down the hallway. They were still there, pressed against the wall on the hinged side of my door, the one side the peephole can't show and a cracked door can't reveal, standing inches away from me while I leaned out and looked in the wrong direction. I think about that a lot. I think about how close my shoulder was to the edge of that door frame. I think about the fact that I almost stepped fully into the hallway to get a better look. I think about what would have happened if I had. And I think about the security guard's voice when he said, "Do not leave your room." Not as advice, not as a suggestion, but with the flat, unequivocal certainty of someone who already knew exactly what was waiting in that hallway. I never went back to that hotel. I requested a different territory for that region, and my company approved it without question, which makes me wonder if I wasn't the first adjuster to make that request. But here's what still keeps me up, what I keep circling back to in the dark. The guard said no one was hurt, but he paused before he said it. And when I asked what happened, he said an individual was on the floor who wasn't a registered guest. He said was. Not is, not has been removed, not was escorted out, was, past tense. The way you describe something that's already over, the way you describe someone who's already gone. But when I opened my door at 6:15 that morning and looked down at the carpet outside room 214, the nap was still pressed flat in 2 shoe-shaped impressions directly in front of my door, facing inward, and they were still warm.